Welcome to the Dental Implant Practices podcast, where each episode will explore how to integrate dental implants into your practice and into bone, with your host, Dr. Philip Gordon.
Welcome back to another episode of the Dental Implant Practices podcast. I'm your host, Philip Gordon, and today it's a huge honor for me to introduce our guest, Mr. Bob Salvin. Bob is the founder and CEO of Salvin Dental Specialties, Inc., a Charlotte, North Carolina-based manufacturer of surgical instrumentation and biomaterials for implant dentistry. Starting from the trunk of a really bad used car in 1981, he has built a business with global brand recognition, now doing business in over 110 countries. This year, Salvin Dental reached a milestone by acquiring a division of a publicly traded company. Salvin Dental has been recognized multiple times as a Fast 50 privately held company by Bank of America and Waterhouse and has made honored numerous times as a best place to work employer. The company is a recipient of the North Carolina's Governor's International Trade Award. Bob is an Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year award winner and a recipient of the Seattle Study Club Charlie English Community Education Award. Bob's entrepreneurial story has been featured in a number of publications, including the chapter in Jeffrey Gitomer's Amazon.com and New York Times bestselling book, The Sales Bible. Bob has been married to Susan Salvin, former director of the Presbyterian Children's Hospital in Charlotte for 27 years. Well, Bob, thanks for being on the show today. It's a great pleasure for me to be able to talk with you today. And how was your Christmas, I guess? How's your time off going?
It was good. A lot of kids over here and a lot of friends. And that was good. And you know, one of the great things about in dentistry is you make friends from all over. So this year we exchanged emails, cards, and with just a lot of terrific people.
Well, you know, with that and the holiday spirit, why don't we start off with you telling everybody about your family and maybe your background before dentistry?
I'm married to a great woman who trusted someone who had no money but a lot of ambition and married me anyway. And so I'm fortunate that I have a partner who is willing to watch me take risks. And that's what you do when you start a business like mine. It's certainly what you do when you start a dental practice. Prior to starting Salvin Dental, I was the sales manager for 3 different companies, all owned by one family. And what I discovered was that every year, it wasn't my family. Every year, we'd have our big sales meeting, and they'd go over the new comp plan, and it was painful. And you know, the implant reps that call on the doctors that we're reaching today all go through this same thing where they do really well, and then they change the comp plan, and then they're behind, then they're on a plan, and then the next year they're fired. So you can go from rep of the year to being fired just because the company changes the numbers. And I decided that I wanted to have my own business, and I wanted it to be in the healthcare field. This is 1981. I wanted to be in the healthcare field because I felt it would be somewhat recession-proof, and I wanted to distribute products, eventually my own brand of products, rather than just be a distributor for somebody else where I develop a book of business on something, and then the company would say, "Hey, we're changing, and you're out." And so I started Salvin Dental, selling my product out of the trunk of a really bad used car. So bad that I had to figure out where the doctor's personal window was and park where there's no way he could look out the window and see what I drove up in. And at that time, the dental supply houses and the mail order companies were separate. And, you know, everybody they'd let the mail order catalog stick out a little bit behind a stack of magazines in their desk. And the local dental supply house guy would come in and say, "Well, Doc, who's going to fix your compressor if you buy from the mail order company?" Well, I went in and said, "Look, I'm not going to put anybody out of business. I'm selling diamonds and carbides, and all I want is a little bit of that business that I know that you're giving the mail order company." And today we know that the mail order companies and the dental supply houses are the same. They've all merged. And in fact, most of the companies that were in Charlotte, where I live, are out of business and have been rolled up into something else. But what I discovered, and this was a huge lesson for me, was that the doctors. When these local reps would say, "You're not dealing with the guy who's selling out of the trunk of his car, are you?" I realized that these guys were perhaps more afraid of losing business to me than they were in providing value to their customers by showing them new products. So what happened was I didn't get to sell everybody, but everybody saw me. They wanted to see what this entrepreneurial guy looked like. And for me, the lesson was that my customers were doctors who, quote, own their own hospitals and wrote their own checks, unquote. So basically, it's small business to small business. So I discovered that my success would be to continue to operate, even no matter how big we got, as a small, privately held company dealing with guys who were making their own decisions and needed to have value in order to make a decision from what they would buy and who they would buy from.
And that's great. I think, dentistry specifically is a lot more person-to-person business, than maybe like a hospital setting where a CEO says, we're doing this, and it gets distributed, down the hierarchy. Business, it's generally, okay, this dentist owns his clinic and he decides what he wants to use and who he wants to buy it from. So probably a much better business to have personal contact, directly with the owner, operator, and the guy using the stuff. So
I agree. And I think that, we've seen so many big companies buying the smaller companies. Now the big companies are buying bigger companies or big companies. And even with the implant companies, we see so many roll-ups in where companies have merged, and it's so big. Doctors say, I used to know somebody at that company. Now I'm not even sure if that guy is still there, or I'm really not tuned into a decision maker. So for us, we're looking at it and say, we want the doctor to have the feeling that everyone they talk to at our company can make decisions. Obviously, they can't make every decision, but they can say, yeah, I can do that for you, and they get back to them. And with the big companies, people aren't even getting back to you because the decision tree is so complicated that decision gets lost, and now people have to move on to something else. Also, the bigger the company is, the more and depending on who finances them, the more they're focused on, I need to have my numbers for this month. And that's why, if you look at your implant company reps, why is this guy? Why is it that I don't see him that often, except on the last couple of days of the month when he's coming in and asking for his order? So for us and for small companies, we want to focus on the long-term value and provide long-term value. And if we don't get the order this month, we'll get it next month. But we're not so focused on the dollar that we lose track of what's best for the customer.
Yeah, those are great, and it's that really comes across from your company, because I've got to tell you, I got to brag on you here a little bit. What impresses me the most is every time I call your company, and I always call because I know what I want, and I so I place the orders for a lot of stuff with implant stuff just because I'm kind of picky about that. But I've never dealt with a dental customer that has been so friendly and knowledgeable and willing to help, and the customer care within your company, to me, is amazing. I just think that says volumes about the company.
You're so nice. I will tell you that one of our secrets, whoever's listening, don't tell anybody the secret, but our phones are set up where they ring in our customer service and sales area, and after the third ring, they ring everywhere in the company. So a couple of years ago, it was about 4 p.m, and it rang in my office. I could tell it was an incoming sales call, and it rang in my office, meaning that all of our people were tied up. So I picked it up, and I said, Salvin Dental, this is Bob. And it was a brand new customer. They had a ton of questions. I helped them with it, and at the end, they said, Bob, could I ask for you again? I said, absolutely, but all of our people are terrific. Anybody here can help you the way I have. And they said, well, could you spell your last name for me? So I got into SALV, and they said, wait a minute, aren't you the guy's pictures in the cover of the magazine? I said, I am. So why are you answering it? And the reason is most people answer the phone to stop it from ringing. We're answering it to provide great service, and we know that doctors have just a little bit of time to call. I mean, Philip, if you're calling, it's between patients. So our goal is to help you as quickly as you want us to help you, but also be available for as long as you want to talk if you have a specific question and need some help. So one of our goals and secrets to success is phones answered by the third ring by a live human being. And if our regular people can't get to it, then our executives will actually pick up the phone and help you.
Well, that's great. So you actually kind of led into one of my next questions. I was going to ask you, what are the 3 most secrets to be successful in business? And I think the first one you just talked about was, hey, actually pick up the phone and try to help somebody. So other than actually picking up the phone and answering it to help somebody as opposed to stopping it ring, give me 2 other I guess, pearls that you've learned in your time in business? And it doesn't even have to be dental specific.
Okay. Well, I'm going to be brief, but I might give you a few more than that. The first is never, ever cut your quality. This applies to me, but it also applies to you for what you're delivering to your patients. 2, understand cash flow. And there's a formula. When cash equals 0, you are dead. So understand your cash flow and get help from your banker. Get him to look at your numbers every year, whether you're borrowing money from them or not, and let them tell you how healthy you are based on their standards. So when you do go back and you want to expand, they know that you know your numbers well enough to where they think that if you think you can pay it back, you can. Next, connect with your customers. People say, where do you get the ideas for the product? It's by listening to our customers. And for a doctor, if a doctor would spend 2 minutes just listening to his patient, talking to them, asking about their family and things like that, and do that consistently, separate from the treatment. Have your patient relationship separate, your personal relationship separate from your clinical relationship. And that patient turns around and refers 2 more people just like them. Then the reality is, for the 2 minutes that you're spending listening to your patient, you're actually making more per hour than you would be doing a crown prep. So connect with your customers. And then for me, the final thing here is well-trained salespeople. We see companies hire people, give them a week's worth of training, and send them out to talk to you guys. Well, in implant dentistry, it's complicated, and there's a lot of nuances. And I don't think that you do customers a favor. The specialists certainly get frustrated because the reps are not well-trained, and in many cases, sometimes they are, but in many cases they're not. So have your, for me, it's having well-trained salespeople. For you as a doctor, it's having a staff that's tuned in and understands what's important to the patient and understands about the procedures, but most importantly, understands what the patient really needs to be sure that they're focused on them.
Yeah, I think that's huge. I mean, you can't under emphasize or overemphasize, I guess, staff development, because you can't expect the most out of your staff if you haven't given them the opportunity to succeed. Yeah, that's got to start with them. Well, I think those are definitely universal principles, and I appreciate you sharing that. I know those to be true for sure, and I think those are applicable across any board. Now, when you got into dental, what did Salvin Dental always start off drifting towards implants, or how did you get involved with implant dentistry? Because in 1981 implant dentistry wasn't near what it is today. So why implants, I guess?
Well, I was selling diamonds and carbides and some instruments door to door, and several of my customers were involved in implant dentistry. One was a guy named Paul Homily, and Paul and I became friends. And what I discovered was that the guys who were involved in implant dentistry were my biggest customers for the other things that I was selling. And I wasn't sure whether they were the biggest customers because they were involved in implant dentistry, or perhaps it was because they had bigger practices and therefore saw a need and had the financial resources to go out and say, hey, I hear about implant dentistry, I'm going to go out and do that. So I would go door to door Monday through Thursday, and then Thursday night I would either drive all night or fly, taking all the money I made Monday through Thursday and go to a dental implant meeting somewhere. And I started out, I would go to the Alabama Dental Implant Study Group. And at that time, it was the best place to go to learn implant dentistry because it was the only place to go. Now there's tons of places to go to do this. And there was a guy named Jerry Nisnick, and he was going around teaching people how to place his implants. And he asked me if I would go, would I set up a table at the back of the room and show some of my instruments. So I did. And, it was the vision to see that this was the future, and also the gumption to say, okay, wherever these guys are, I'm going to be as well. And I began to expand my product line. People would ask me for things, I would find them. My first catalog was mimeographed, and I think the ink would smear on your hands. The new one is a couple hundred pages, and it's full color, and it's but the principles are the same. Find out what people want, listen, find out what people want, look for good solutions, and show people things that will help them solve the problems that they have.
Yeah, that's great. I actually did a previous podcast with Paul Homily, and he talked about that Alabama study club too. So I wish I'd have been born 30 years earlier, could have been a part of that. But I definitely love all the exposure to implants they have now. So with getting into implants specifically, which is great because you saw a niche and went after it, I guess tell me why you never decided to sell implants, because maybe initially on it was a very closed window, but it seems like now everybody's making their own implants. Why has that never been a goal of yours?
Well, this is going to be, if the Harvard Business Review were asking this question, then they would have to decide whether this was brilliant wisdom not to get into implants or just sheer dumb luck not doing it. But what I looked at that time, now we have territory reps, but at that time I saw that to sell dental implants, you needed to have direct representation, and I simply did not have the money for that. By the same token, I also saw that my best customers were the dental implant customers of all the big companies. So if you think about the Trivial Pursuit game, where you have the little pies that go into the little thing every time you win a category, and you look at the implant companies, each having a piece of the pie, my best customers were the top 20% of all of their customers combined. So I felt like as soon as we started to sell an implant, we'd be in the implant business and not in the everything for the implant practice but the implant business. I thought that would be a broader category to be a market niche and be able to reach the most people that I could with proprietary products. Remember, I went back when I first started, I wanted to have proprietary products so that if I invested in research and development to develop it or invested in the sales force to sell it, then people it would be my product and wouldn't be a commodity.
Sure, understood.
Does that answer your question?
No, it does. And I think you were smart to do that. Especially back in the 80s, if you would have tried to start an implant company, Nobel would have stepped on you and squashed you in a month. So it's probably best to say, hey, let's provide the ancillaries and let the docs figure out what kind of implant they want to place, because then everybody can also buy your instruments.
Sure, and we get invited to Nobel and Strummer. We get invited to a lot of courses that these companies sponsor because we're not competitive in that area.
Sure, absolutely. So, moving into other ancillaries, why don't you tell everybody how you expanded into regenerative materials and grafting and bone and all of that?
Well, years ago, this is actually a simple story. Years ago, I became friendly with the guys that started LifeNet. And at that time, they had a distribution relationship with St. Jude's Medical for heart valves. And later, they did a relationship with Johnson & Johnson for their orthopedic tissue. And tissue banking, for the most part, started out really with the dental hospitals because the Navy was using this. So I went to them and said, could we do an arrangement where we would distribute your product? And we did it. Bill Anderson was the founder of LifeNet, and we literally did it on a handshake. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy trusted me to do this. And he said, Bob, I see you as an entrepreneur just like I was, and I'm going to take a chance on it. And we did. So down the road, we're having a conversation one day, and William Simmons, who's president of our company, said, do you know what the most searched term is on our website? This is the term that people plug in the most, and it was membranes and regenerative. So we decided to get in that business. So over time, we felt like we needed we had a few products, some membranes, some collagen type products, collagen tape, that we're distributing on our own name, but then we began to develop our own products. And this has taken us a while because you have to go through the FDA. We're paid for, paying for animal studies. The FDA takes a long time to do all this. But we've developed some unique products that solve problems, but also have a different handling characteristic that people ask us for. And now regenerative is probably over 50% of our business, and we have a number of products in the pipeline, which I'll talk about later, that solve problems, have superior handling characteristics, better tear strength, for example, sit up as putties, and have a cost advantage because we don't have the overhead of a larger company.
Yeah, that's great. I think people recognize now more that regeneratives are so important, because if you don't if you can't save or produce bone, you never get to place the implant. So I think we're definitely seeing a lot more regenerative in the market, because it's just so crucial for anyone learning to place implants or placing a lot of implants. You have to be able to create or save bone. So that's great that you guys are
Exactly.
embracing that.
Exactly. And even beyond for the guys who are not placing a lot of implants, to understand socket grafting for
Absolutely.
extractions. Every dentist should understand socket grafting, and not enough of them
No,
do.
100%. What I try to preach is before you should place an implant, you should be skilled and expert at extractions, socket grafting, and suturing. You need to learn the basics and principles of those, because one, if you're not doing those, you're not going to have any patients to place implants in, because the bone's going to all melt away. And two, those are great skills to develop to take your first step in learning implant dentistry. So I think socket grafting at a bare minimum should be the gold standard. I don't extract a tooth anymore and never not put something in it. So even if the patients can't pay for it, sometimes I just plug something in there and say, you know what, this will save me some headache later if they do want to place an implant. So
Also, it's critical to learn how to extract a tooth without breaking the buccal bone, to do atraumatic extraction. And there's so much instrumentation available today that makes that easier than it was when, they have the old ad about it's not your father's Oldsmobile. It's not your father's dental extraction instruments anymore. There are things that make that easier and reproducible to do, but you've got to take a course and understand it rather than try to read the manual or learn it from the video.
absolutely, yeah. So I guess one more kind of business question, then we'll jump into more specifics down and dirty about Salvin, what you guys offer and all that. Where did you get your biggest breakthrough? I know at some point you're out there, you're beating the doors and shaking hands. When did things really turn for you? What was that moment where things really took off for Bob Salvin and Salvin Dental?
Two areas. One, where I found I went through an entrepreneurial coaching program in Toronto and Chicago called the Strategic Coach. And there were two big breakthroughs for me there. One was when I found myself physically uncomfortable doing something that I could do well, but I knew I needed to delegate to somebody else. And the other thing was to go through this process called the 10X, 10 times model. And let me take a couple of minutes to explain it. And that is that if you've started a business from scratch, then you're 10 times bigger than where you were. So the goal is, how could you become 10 times bigger after that? And it's not necessarily 10 times bigger. It could be 10 times more profitable, 10 times more fun, 10 times less debt. You're funding your pension plan, whatever goal it is, think of it as a 10X type of goal. So if you look at it from where you are now or where I was, I would look back and say, what were the events that took place that helped me to grow to where I was? And I would look back and see, okay, adding our still pack line, or adding the LifeNet relationship, or hiring this particular person, or buying our computer system, or going from this type of distribution to that, or whatever it was. And I could look back, and each of those events, you could do basically one big 10X event a year. But the trick then is to say, okay, for me and my business, and you and your practices, whoever's listening, if I were going to grow my practice, don't get intimidated by the 10X thing, but to grow my practice and have it better, bigger, faster, cheaper, whatever it is, what would be those events? Maybe it's to learn how to place dental implants. Maybe it's to learn how to graft. Maybe it's to buy a CAT scan machine. Maybe it's to hire an implant treatment coordinator. Maybe it's to take this particular course. And you say, okay, if these are the things that are going to take me to the next level, then what if I focused on getting those things done? Maybe spend a half a day a week focusing on that. And for me, what happened was I actually grew my business 10 times twice. The first time I did it in 7 years. Most people say I can do it. If you grow it 10 times in 10 years, compounded is 26% annual growth, which is hard to do once you get up there. But I did it in 7 years just by focusing on what's important. And the big breakthrough for me was I found out I was able to determine what was critically important for me from listening. And I would ask people, what are you buying from somebody else that you would buy from me? What do you like that other people are doing that we're not doing? and it could be in any other field. If for a dentist, what do you not like about going to your physician's office with Obamacare and all the changes with that you'd like to see us not do or continue to do better the way we are? And listening to that and understanding what are the critical inflection points for your customer. Here's why they like you more than they like them. That defines what these 10X things for you. So I've told you a little bit about how I got there, but hopefully I did that in a way where people can, by listening and focusing on 5 or 10 things and working on those things every week, you'd be surprised how quickly you get there, to give your listeners a take-home that they can turn around and use.
Yeah, that's great. I think, like you're saying, the first step in that is figure out what those events are, and
Exactly.
For me, looking back 5 years, it was, okay, deciding to take that first step to placing my first implant. And then it was deciding I was going to place 50 implants my next year. And then it was figuring out, okay, I'm going to buy a CBCT cone beam machine so that I can really do it better and faster and cheaper. And then it was figuring out, okay, which master series of courses do I want to take to really get my training up to the next level. And then for this next 5 years, it's going to be, okay, I'm going to dedicate to becoming, a fellow in the American Academy of Implant Dentistry. And so it takes determining those goals. And then, like you said, it's going to take delegating X amount of time each day, week, month, and year to achieving those goals.
And Philip, you're smart the way you expressed it. I enjoyed listening to you describe that, because most people, and we're recording this around the new year, so maybe people are thinking, okay, this is going to be my New Year resolution, but most people say, I'm going to lose weight and eat better, as opposed to I'm going to lose 10 pounds and I'm going to do it 2 pounds a month or whatever, and I'm going to eat better. I'm going to cut out the amount of red meat I eat by, once a week or something like that. So what you have done is that you have been very specific in what you do, and you also have to say, okay, and this is my timetable to do it. Because if you have a goal without a timetable, it's really a slogan. If you have and lots of times, just doing this and writing it down, people will achieve these goals just because they've written them down, as opposed to you get to the end of the year and say, well, I didn't do very much of this. And, we don't have much time left on the planet. So, and there's so much opportunity in dentistry, now's the time to do it. So good for you for doing it.
Yeah, I'm going to put this out on the air, and I'm inviting other people along my journey. So I'm hoping that, other people help prop me up so they can, when they check in on me, or if I see someone in a meeting and say, well, how's it coming with your fellowship? And I'll say, well, it's time to get back up on the horse, because, or I'll see you at the course next month. And I think you have to express those goals, and you have to put them out there, and you can't be afraid to let other people know what you're doing, even if it's bold and audacious. You have to be able to take that risk, I guess, to get that reward. So, well, that's great. So, speaking about courses and such, that tell me about why doesn't Salvin Dental teach their own courses? I know you guys sponsor courses, or I guess tell me about CE courses. What's your philosophy on CE courses? Which ones do you guys sponsor? How can somebody get better CE? Just kind of break that down, because I'm always trying to find great education for myself and for my listeners, because like I was telling you, I would buy everything in your catalog, but I only know how to use half of it. Tell someone who's a general dentist, either doesn't place implants or has placed a few, and says, look, I want to do more, but I got to get good training. I just don't want to wing it. What's Bob Salvin's advice on dental CE?
Well, first of all, I know a lot of companies sponsor courses, or it's their own course. They're actually putting the course on. I think the law now is that you've got to have a separate organization doing it, but it's still like a total company-generated course. And those are good, but I don't know that you get the broadest education, because they're truly focusing on selling their products. For us, we sponsor a lot of courses. Counting all of the sessions of the maxi courses and things like that, we probably sponsor 250 events a year. But we're on the lookout for solid courses that cover complications, and we're not really sponsoring any single weekend courses to do something other than a specific topic, like a cadaver course, like John Russo teaches, or a lot of Mike Picos' courses. that are topic specific, and there's a ton of others out there. For a number of these courses, we're financial sponsors, but there are other sponsors as well. But we're also trying to go to the instructors and saying, this is what we're hearing people ask us about. You're teaching a cadaver course. Can you figure out a way to incorporate cone beam into that course so people can see both disciplines at once, integrated so that they can learn? I think if they can do that, the learning experience is multiplicative and exponential rather than trying to take two different courses and hopefully try to put those together. We do help, I have to disclose, we do help by sending emails out for a lot of these courses, and we send them out over the name of the doctor teaching the course. So if you didn't like Bob, you could unsubscribe Bob, but you'd still be subscribed to Philip, for example. And so if people are interested in learning, getting on the list to at least see what these courses are, see what courses are available, I urge them, call our company, say, I'd like to get on your catalog mailing list. And if you are on the catalog mailing list, that's great. But be sure that we have your email address. You can always unsubscribe from anything you want to unsubscribe from, but this will kind of get you in the loop of what's going on. And in many cases, we'll offer partial scholarships and things like that would not be available on the course sponsors' emails, but they would be on the ones we send out. I will tell you that when we first got into this, people would call me up and they said, listen, I'm teaching this course, and I want the same support that you give. This is the early days, Mike Picos and Carl Misch. And I'm thinking, who are you? And I'd look them up on my database and see that they just took Carl Misch's course or Mike Picos' course. I'm thinking, you just took the course. How are you qualified to teach this material? So we were pretty selective in who we did not help. But once people proved that they really had a good thing, we go take the course and listen to it. Said, this is one that's putting out there, because we didn't want to sell our product. I mean, sure, you could buy it, but I'd rather sell our product to people who know how to use it than someone who just orders something and doesn't have a clue, and then they get in trouble. We look bad, they look bad, and it's not advantageous for the patient. So if you want to get more information about courses, be sure we have your email address. You can unsubscribe anytime you want to whatever material is sent out. But this will give you kind of a viewpoint of what's, if you've taken a basic course, this will give you a good look at what's available after that to tune up your skills and help you solve specific problems.
Yeah, that's great. I'll have to check, because I have a feeling maybe my office email's on that, so my front desk is probably getting them and deleting all those. I'll need to get my personal on there, because I'm almost like a CE junkie. I would take enough CE to where I didn't make any money at a fault to myself, but I'm always interested in what's going on, and at the point I'm at, I want, like you said, topic specific. Hey, I want to do more, X, Y, and Z. Maybe I want to get into sinus grafting, or maybe I want to get into, implant recovery or things like that. So it's good that you teach, specific topics, because there's enough big, broad groups out there teaching, the basics and 101 and getting you off the ground.
Sure. So I haven't looked, but we might have your email address as info@philipgordon.com, and we need Philip at philipgordon.com. So be sure to let us know.
Sure. Yeah, we'll do. Well, that's great. So I guess from our experience here and from yours, after getting some basic training in implant dentistry, let's say somebody goes through like a maxi course and gets the basics or whatever. What's the next step for people who want to successfully integrate implants into their practice, or maybe they've taken a weekend course? What's the next big step? Is it the maxi course? Is it the AAID? Is it Picos's courses? What do you recommend from? I know organizations and academies. There's so much out there, and I've seen you at basically every event I've ever been to, so I know about everything. What are some of the things that you would direct a general dentist towards?
Okay, this is what I would do. If I just took a weekend course, I think that's kind of a tasting menu a little bit to say, is this something that I really want to do? To me, there's two types of dentists this is complicated, Philip, blood and no blood. So you have to decide if you're going to be a blood guy and do the surgery. So once you've done that, I suggest that people take some type of maxi course. And the benefit there is that it's a curriculum. It's a design curriculum, so you go from one experience to another, and look for one where you can take your own patients and do your own surgeries. I've seen people's hands trembling as they make that first incision, and then they come back the next month and they're really confident. Sometimes you have to go out of town to get that confidence, but I would try to find something where it's hands-on. One of the things that bothers me sometimes is I'll see people sign up for an advanced course, and they just took the basic course the week before. And they literally don't have enough hands-on experience to really get the full benefit of the advanced course. There are some specialty courses that I would absolutely take. John Russo has a great cadaver course. Jim Rakowski has a great PRP course. He has a great grafting course. What to use and when to use it, I think is terrific. Mike Picos runs a full gamut of courses, and it's hang on to your hat and fasten your seatbelt. A lot to learn. I know people who repeat his courses. The Mish Institute has great complications courses. So look at those, but I would start out with something like Maxi course, and then go back and on the individual courses, take some of that material again, maybe from a different instructor, till you really understand it. In terms of organizations, the ICOI and the AAID, the International College of Oral Implantology, and the American Academy of Implant Dentistry are both great organizations, and both offer a path to some type of certification or diplomate status. And I urge people to do that just to pay their dues. And part of it there is that you've got to do some cases and show your cases. So it's see one, do one, teach one. It's if you can do the case well enough to present to get that certification, then it forces you to really get into it and understand why you're doing what you're doing. The other meetings that I think, and both those have great meetings. The other meetings that I would suggest people look at is go to the Perio meeting. The Perio meeting is all about, it's getting more about implant dentistry. I would go to that. You don't have to tell anybody you're not a periodontist. Just go. There's a lot of science there, and it's pretty interesting. Theirs is evidence-based. They tend to be more evidence-based than the other organizations. So there's a little bit more research, but it's well worth it. The AO, the Academy of Osseointegration, that's in the spring, and that's another great meeting. A meeting that I think is terrific, and it's somewhat overlooked, is the oral surgery, the AMOS meeting, but not their regular meeting. They have an implant meeting in December of every year, the first weekend in December in Chicago. It's a great time to go to Chicago to be there for the Christmas decorations. But this meeting started out for surgeons and their prosthetic referrals. So it's multidisciplinary. You can see a lot of stuff. It's 2 days. It's pretty intense, but it's a lot of fun. And I see people go there. I actually see more prosthodontists there who are placing implants than we do at the prosthodontic meeting who are placing implants. So it's well worth going to that. That's in December and January. And just call the Amos or look on their website and sign up for it.
Well, I think, you've got enough there to talk about. Do you have links to all these on your website? I know you've got links to some of the courses that you guys suggest on your website. Are all these listed on your references section or CE section?
I'd like to tell you that they are and they're current, but after the first of the year, they will be.
Yeah, no, I get that. I know everybody's updating their courses and their listings right now. This is the time of year that everybody kicks over and starts looking at 17. So there's usually not much going on in January sometimes. So yeah, well, that's great. I am always trying to figure out who's got the best information because. And also who's willing to teach to me. I don't want to go to some of these meetings and say, oh, he's just a general dentist. I'm not going to be accepted. I'm trying to go to places where people will open up and teach and learn because I know, I've only got so much time out of the office. I've only got so much time away from my family, and I've only got so much money to spend on CE, and so I think people are trying to figure out who's got relevant stuff and who's willing to really teach from the heart. And who's really trying to show and teach and not just get up there and brag and show off their cases. And I think those are two different courses. So
yeah, there are people who show off cases where where they send them for a cleaning before they bring them back to take their pictures. And the biggest complaint I think for a lot of these is that's great, but I just can't duplicate that in my practice. So the courses we want to be involved in are the ones where they give you enough information where you can duplicate or replicate that in your practice. And you also know when to refer or get some help. And I urge people, if they're interested in learning something and they can't find it easily on the internet, my sales reps go to all these courses and just call our office and say, look, I'm not calling to place an order. I want to talk to a rep. I'm interested in learning about socket grafting. I'm interested in learning about PRP. I'm interested in learning where can I go to learn the difference between the different grafting materials, and we'll tell you what's coming up next. And sometimes we can get you a little scholarship. And if the course is full, we can get you in. So call, and we're there to help you. For us, it's a long-term investment in you, the customer, and no one's going to try to, if you say, I'm interested in the course, no one's going to say, well, let me say what you need for the course. Let's get you into the course and get you where you are, and be sure that that course be sure that you go into the course that has the curriculum that we think you need, but also what you think you need as well.
Sure. What's what's next for Salvin Dental? I mean, what kind of innovations are you personally, and then corporately, Salvin Dental? What are you guys working on now? I know everything is rapidly changing all the time. You guys seem to be at the front of stuff. There's so many things within different organizations and different materials and different implants, and everybody's buying different companies, and there's certain things just going on, it seems, all the time. But from your standpoint and what you guys are looking to do in the next 5 years, what's on your doorstep?
Okay. First, let me tell you, I get calls all the time. I'm focusing more on new product development. This year, I did not go to the AAID meeting, but instead went to the North American Spine Society meeting to look at what technologies are being used in spine and orthopedics that we can transfer or port over to dentistry. And this past year, we acquired the dental biologics division of Exactech, which is a publicly traded spine and orthopedic company, for a putty that we were working with, and we're now manufacturing that ourselves. Probably a better answer for your question is what we're not doing, because we have people call us all the time. I've developed this product, and we go look at it. We ask people about it, and with proper non-disclosure agreements, and they have a great idea perhaps, but it doesn't really solve a problem that a lot of people have. By the same token, there are things that may solve the problem, but they're too expensive to use in a dental office. You don't need a $1,200 grafting material. You need a $200 grafting material. So we're looking to, in many cases, we'll find an orthopedic material, and we'll pay for the animal studies used or necessary to get a 510K or an FDA approval for dental in exchange for having an exclusive on that product. On other things, we're developing them ourselves, which is a big step for a company our size. We used to be small, now we're a mid-sized company, and last year we spent almost $1 million on research and development to bring these products to market, and it takes a while to get them to market, but we think that we want to bring the right solutions that are cost-effective for the average person to use and have the handling characteristics that in the average person's hands produce a very predictable result, as opposed to products that produce a heroic result but are not predictably heroic. So again, we're innovating by listening, we're innovating by looking at what other people are doing, and also people are bringing us technologies today that they wouldn't have brought my company 5 years ago, but now they are. And that it's an exciting time to be in business for me. It's an exciting time to remain privately held for me. And my partners, William Simmons and Greg Slayton, own part of the company, so it's not just me. And it's also an exciting time to close out. It's an exciting time for people like you, Philip, to be involved in implant dentistry and be involved in dentistry in general. Well, particularly if you're in private practice and you're looking at all the other things that are happening in corporate dentistry or whatever, this is how you guys are going to survive and thrive, and this is what your patients want from you.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got to be continually innovating and making yourself better because, if you're not, the competition is. And it's not even the competition. It's just we always are expecting more. I mean, we shouldn't be at the same place in 10 years from now than we are today. And so if you're not, continuing to try to grow, the field of science is going to leave you in the dust. And so I think it's great that you guys are doing that and not just, sitting back on your laurels and said, okay, we've built a good thing. Now let's just sit back and kick up our heels and just, let it all happen. Cause that's how you let somebody else pass you by.
Exactly. Philip, I'm so thrilled. I'm flattered that you invited me to do this. And I've enjoyed our conversation today. And I hope that what we were able to accomplish with this conversation turns into a message that will help other people if they'll listen, because there's resources available to them. And hopefully we've identified some of those resources for your listeners.
Yeah, it's been great. And, I would just ask one thing. If anybody that you think would be a good resource for me to podcast with in the future, maybe try to pass that along. And if you have any kind of pathway that you could help, share this podcast once I get it up and listening, that would be a great help to me, because I think, there's a lot of people that could benefit from hearing this information. And any way you could help me get more people on the show and spread the word, I'd be much appreciated. And look forward to seeing you at the next big meeting coming up.
Perfect. Philip, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for your time, and you have a great day.